Nobody in the conference room expected her to speak up, especially not like that. The room was filled with polished shoes, designer suits, and the cold scent of money floating in the air. Powerful executives sat around a massive oak table, their eyes fixed on the sleek presentation screen flashing numbers and projections worth millions. Contracts worth a small fortune were being signed that day. Investors, board members, even the CEO herself. Everyone was there to celebrate yet another profitable deal. But then, a voice cut through the tension like a blade. A voice that didn't belong. "This contract is a trap," said a young black girl, standing near the back, barely noticeable until that exact second. Every head in the room turned toward her. The CEO, a woman known for her icy confidence and billion-dollar decisions, froze mid-sentence. Her pen, poised over the final signature line, hovered in the air. For the first time in years, she went silent. Before we dive deeper into this journey, take a moment to support this channel. If you enjoy stories that touch the heart and inspire the soul, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment below where you're watching from. We love hearing your stories too. People started whispering, exchanging glances filled with confusion and disbelief. Who was this girl? Why was she even there? The security team shifted uncomfortably by the door, waiting for a signal to remove her. But the CEO didn't say a word. Not yet. Instead, her sharp eyes narrowed, locking onto the girl like a predator assessing unexpected prey. The girl, whose name was Maya, stood her ground. Her heart raced like thunder in her chest, but her voice stayed steady. "I read the fine print," she continued, holding up a crumpled copy of the contract. Page 17, Clause 8. "This deal will strip hundreds of families of their homes. You're hiding it under legal jargon, but it's there." Gasps filled the room. Some executives laughed nervously. Others grabbed their copies, flipping through the pages as if desperate to prove her wrong. But deep down, many already knew she wasn't lying. Maya wasn't supposed to be there. She wasn't an investor, a lawyer, or even an employee, just an intern, a temporary assistant who delivered coffee and took meeting notes. Barely noticed, overlooked, invisible to people swimming in wealth and power. But over the past few weeks, she had stayed late, reading everything she could get her hands on, studying contracts no one thought she'd understand, watching how deals were made, and what she found shook her to her core. This wasn't just about business. It was about lives, about families with children who would wake up one morning to eviction notices on their doors. Also, the company could expand its luxury real estate portfolio and add a few more million to their already overflowing accounts. The CEO finally stood, placing the pen down with exaggerated slowness. Her voice, when she spoke, was low and controlled. "Who let her in here?" she asked, eyes still fixed on Maya, but directing the question to the room. The board members shifted awkwardly, none wanting to take responsibility. One of the senior managers, Mr. Grant, spoke up nervously. She's an intern, ma'am. Works under me. I'll handle this." But before anyone could move, the CEO raised her hand, stopping him mid-step. "No, I want to hear her out." The room fell into stunned silence. It wasn't just surprising. It was unheard of. The CEO never entertained interruptions, never allowed anyone to question her deals. But something about Maya's tone, something about her defiance, triggered a flicker of curiosity. Or maybe a flicker of fear. Maya took a deep breath, fighting the knot in her throat. "You're a millionaire. You don't need this money," she said, her voice shaking just enough to reveal her nerves, but strong enough to make her point. "But they do. The families this will hurt. They have nothing. This contract, it's a trap. Not for you. For them." Eyes darted across the room. Investors pulled out their phones, already texting legal teams. Mr. Grant tugged at his collar, beads of sweat gathering on his forehead. And for the first time in years, the CEO didn't know what to say. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. The tension thickened with every passing second. Then, without another word, the CEO grabbed the contract, tore it in half, and walked out of the room, leaving everyone speechless. The moment the CEO left the room, the entire atmosphere shifted like a storm had just passed, leaving destruction and confusion in its wake. People stared at the shredded contract lying on the conference table like it was a fallen king. The sound of tearing paper still echoed in their minds. No one moved. No one spoke. Investors looked at each other, searching for answers in silent glances. Phones buzzed with incoming calls from lawyers and financial advisors, all demanding to know what had just happened to the multi-million-dollar deal they were minutes away from closing. Mr. Grant, pale and sweating, rubbed his temples in disbelief. A few board members rushed out after the CEO, but she was already gone, disappearing behind the heavy doors of her private office on the top floor, where billion-dollar decisions were made and unmade. Maya stood there, frozen, holding the crumpled contract in her hands like it was both her weapon and her shield. For a few seconds, she wondered if she'd just ruined her life. Would she get fired? Blacklisted? Sued? The weight of the corporate world suddenly felt like it was crashing down on her small shoulders. But deep inside, there was something else. A spark. A small, growing flame of pride. For once, she hadn't stayed silent. For once, she had stood up even against people drowning in money and power. Her heart raced, but it wasn't just fear anymore, it was adrenaline. Down the hall, behind thick soundproof doors, the CEO sat alone at her desk, staring at the skyline of the city she practically owned. The view from her office was a reminder of her fortune, her influence, and the empire she had built brick by brick, deal by deal. Her phone rang nonstop. Emails flooded her screen. Legal teams demanded explanations, but she ignored them all. Her mind was stuck, replaying Maya's words over and over. You don't need this money, but they do. For years, she had buried her conscience under layers of contracts, profits, and boardroom applause. But something about today felt different. That girl, she reminded her of someone she used to be. Hungry, determined, willing to fight for what's right before the millions, before the power, before the coldness set in. Meanwhile, Maya found herself escorted to HR by a visibly shaken Mr. Grant. You've got guts, I'll give you that, he mumbled, trying to sound stern, but failing miserably. But you just embarrassed half the board of directors in front of each other. Do you have any idea how much money was on the line? How much this company stand to lose? Maya lifted her chin, her voice steady. And did you have any idea how many people were about to lose their homes? For a second, Mr. Grant said nothing. Then he sighed deeply, rubbing his face like he couldn't decide whether to fire her or applaud her. Before HR could even start the paperwork, a notification popped up on every executive's email. An emergency board meeting. Called immediately. No one expected that. It was scheduled for 5 p.m. sharp, and Maya's name was on the attendee list. Shock rippled through the office. Interns didn't attend board meetings. Interns got coffee. Interns ran errands. They didn't sit at the same table where millions of dollars changed hands. Rumors spread like wildfire across every floor of the skyscraper. Who was this girl? Was she getting fired publicly? Or was something bigger about to happen? Back in her office, the CEO sat alone, her mind racing. Old memories flooded back. Memories of her younger days, when she too had been underestimated, when she fought to climb the corporate ladder surrounded by billionaires who laughed at her ambition. For years, she had sworn to never let emotions interfere with business. But today something cracked. She opened her drawer, pulling out an old photograph of herself from decades ago. A young black woman standing at a protest, holding a sign that said, "People over profits." For the first time in a long time, she smiled. And as the clock neared 5 p.m., one question lingered in the air, heavy and unanswered. What was the CEO going to do next? The boardroom felt like a pressure cooker. Every executive took their seat with forced composure. But the energy in the room betrayed their true feelings. Fear, confusion, and above all, curiosity. Never in the company's history had an intern been summoned to a high-stakes board meeting. Not for a billion-dollar deal. Not for anything. The air smelled of designer cologne, expensive leather, and tension thick enough to slice with a knife. Maya sat at the far end of the table, her hands trembling slightly under the polished wood. She tried to steady her breathing, but every gaze burned into her like a spotlight. Rows of millionaires sat around her, their tailored suits worth more than she made in a year, each one representing a piece of the company's enormous fortune. And there she was, an unpaid intern in a thrift store blazer. The CEO entered last. The room fell silent as she walked in, her heels clicking against the marble floor with slow, deliberate steps. Everyone rose, as protocol demanded. The CEO waved her hand, signaling them to sit. Her expression was unreadable, a perfect mask honed from years of negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts and navigating boardroom politics. She didn't sit at her usual seat at the head of the table. Instead, she walked toward Maya and placed a folder directly in front of her. Gasps broke out. Some board members exchanged shocked glances. Mr. Grant's mouth hung open like he wanted to object, but didn't dare. Inside the folder was a revised version of the contract, the same one Maya had called out earlier. Only now page 17, clause 8 was gone. Stripped out. Deleted. You were right, the CEO said, her voice low, but carrying enough power to fill the room. I don't need this money, but I do need to know that I'm not turning into the kind of leader I once despised. The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some of them began whispering, questioning what this meant for future deals, for their profits, for their bonuses. But the CEO wasn't finished. She turned to face the entire room, her tone now sharper, stronger. From this day forward, no contract gets signed without a full ethical review. If it's going to make us richer by making others poor, I don't want it. The announcement hit the room like a thunderclap. Investors who lived for quarterly gains looked like they'd been punched in the gut. Some pulled out their phones, already texting damage control plans to their PR teams and shareholders. But others paused. For the first time, some faces showed something close to respect for the CEO's decision. The woman who had built her billion-dollar empire brick by brick was making a choice that no one saw coming. A choice for people over profits. A choice to walk away from easy millions and take a harder, more ethical path. Maya's heart pounded so loudly she was sure others could hear it. Before she could even process what was happening, the CEO spoke again, this time looking directly at her. You don't belong in the intern pool anymore, she said. You're too valuable for that. A murmur ran through the board members like shockwave. Was this actually happening? Starting tomorrow, the CEO continued, you'll report directly to me. I want you on my strategy team. Effective immediately. The room froze. An intern promoted straight into the strategy division, reporting to the CEO herself? Unheard of. Maya sat there stunned, blinking back tears she didn't want anyone to see. The very people who had ignored her in elevators and hallways were now staring at her like she was some overnight phenomenon. Whispers started swirling again, this time mixed with disbelief and, in some cases, admiration. Mr. Grant, still recovering from the shock, gave her a small, reluctant nod, part apology, part respect. The CEO grabbed her tablet, signaling the end of the meeting. Everyone get to work, she said with finality. As she walked out, she paused just long enough to glance over her shoulder at Maya. Oh, and Maya, she added, her voice softer now, but still carrying authority. Good catch. With that, she disappeared behind the doors, leaving Maya sitting there, still holding the revised contract in her trembling hands. But deep down, Maya knew this was just the beginning. The next morning, the entire building buzzed like never before. Rumors about Maya spread across every department, from accounting to marketing, from the mailroom to the executive suites. Employees who never even knew her name were suddenly sending her LinkedIn requests, congratulating her in the hallways, and peeking curiously over their cubicle walls whenever she walked by. People whispered phrases like overnight success, the intern who changed everything, and the girl who stood up to millions. Her inbox overflowed with messages, some filled with genuine admiration, others thinly veiled jealousy. But none of that mattered to Maya right now. She was too busy preparing for her first official day on the CEO's strategy team, a team usually reserved for Ivy League graduates and high-profile consultants who charge thousands of dollars an hour just to give advice on how to make more money. Maya walked into the top floor for the first time not as an errand girl, but as part of the leadership team. The marble floors gleamed under her shoes, and the glass walls offered a panoramic view of the entire city. A city built on ambition, money, and power. Her desk was smaller than the others, tucked in a corner, but it didn't matter. She had made it here not because of her connections or her wealth, but because she spoke up when no one else had the courage. As she sat down, she noticed something new waiting for her. A personalized nameplate, already engraved, sitting proudly on her desk. It read, Maya Johnson, Strategic Ethics Advisor. Her breath caught in her throat. Strategic Ethics Advisor. She wasn't dreaming. Minutes later, her phone rang. It was the CEO's assistant, inviting her to a private one-on-one meeting upstairs. The CEO's office, known among employees as a glass throne, was infamous for making people nervous. Deals worth millions, sometimes billions, were made or broken inside those walls. As Maya stepped inside, she was greeted by the CEO sitting at her desk, scrolling through her tablet, dressed in a navy blue suit that probably cost more than Maya's entire student loan debt. But for the first time, the CEO smiled at her, a real smile. "Sit down, Maya," she said, motioning to the chair across from her. For a few long seconds, neither of them spoke. The CEO finally broke the silence. "You know, I've built this company chasing numbers, contracts, wealth, more money, more power, and for years it worked. Until yesterday." She paused, folded her hands. "You reminded me of something I forgot a long time ago. Why I started. I didn't get into business to hurt people. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that." Maya stayed quiet, letting the weight of those words settle. The CEO continued, her gaze softening just a little. "From now on, I want you here in every major decision. I need someone to challenge me, to make me pause before I sign deals that could ruin lives." Maya felt her heart swell with both pride and nervous anticipation. "I'll do my best," she said quietly. The CEO chuckled lightly. "Oh, I know you will. That's why you're here." Then, without warning, the CEO leaned back and asked a question Maya wasn't expecting. "Tell me, what's the first thing you'd change about how we do business?" The room fell silent again. But this time, Maya didn't hesitate. "We stopped putting profit over people," she said. "Starting with the housing project this contract was tied to. We find a way to build that development without forcing families out." The CEO stared at her for a beat, then slowly nodded. "All right," she said, a small smile creeping onto her face. "Let's rewrite the playbook." And just like that, a new chapter began. Over the next few weeks, the company underwent a transformation that few believed possible. It started small. The housing project Maya had fought so hard to protect was completely redesigned. Instead of displacing families, the company invested millions into revitalizing the neighborhood. Affordable housing units were added alongside the luxury apartments, creating a mixed-income community. Local media caught wind of the story. Headlines shifted from "corporate giant expands empire" to "million-dollar CEO rewrites the rules." People over profit. For the first time in years, the company's press coverage wasn't filled with criticism about greed and corporate expansion at any cost. Instead, there were stories about compassion, change, and a young black woman who stood her ground in a room full of millionaires. Inside the company, employees noticed the ripple effect. Executives started reviewing contracts more carefully. Middle managers held discussions about ethical decision-making. The legal team created a new division specifically for ethical compliance. And at the heart of it all was Maya. Every week, she sat in meetings she once delivered coffee to. She voiced concerns during presentations that once felt way out of her league. She reviewed documents before they reached the CEO's desk. And each time she raised her hand to speak, people listened. Some did it out of respect, others out of fear of another public embarrassment. But regardless of their reasons, her voice mattered now. One afternoon, during a strategy session on a new luxury hotel project worth nearly $500 million, Maya noticed a clause buried deep in the planning documents, language that allowed for shortcuts in worker safety regulations during construction. It was legal, profitable, but dangerous. She flagged it immediately. The room grew tense. Investors wanted fast results. Construction teams were already lined up, but Maya stood firm. "We're risking lives just to save a few million on safety measures," she said, her voice calm but unshakable. The CEO looked at her, remembering the last time Maya had called out a contract, and nodded again. "Pull the clause," she ordered. The room sighed collectively. Another multi-million-dollar decision flipped because one girl refused to stay silent. The financial analysts ran the numbers, warning about potential profit loss. But something incredible happened next. The public support for the company skyrocketed. Stock prices rose. Social media flooded with praise for the CEO's new leadership style. Customers who once boycotted the company now flocked back in support. It turned out ethics could be profitable too. Billionaires from other industries started calling the CEO for advice. Business schools requested interviews. Maya's story became the subject of TED Talks, podcasts, and think pieces about corporate responsibility in the age of greed. Her face even appeared on the cover of a popular business magazine under the headline, "The Intern Who Changed a Billion-Dollar Empire." Late one evening, after a long day of meetings, Maya stood by the giant glass window of her new office, smaller than the CEO's, but with a breathtaking view of the city skyline. Lights twinkled below like stars on Earth. She thought about how far she'd come, from delivering coffee to delivering change. Her phone buzzed with a new message from the CEO herself. Just 2 words, "Proud of you." Maya smiled softly, staring out into the city she had helped protect, knowing this was only the beginning of her impact. And somewhere in a small apartment across town, a family who had once faced eviction tucked their kids into bed safe, secure, and with a future they almost lost. All because one girl dared to speak up in a room full of millionaires. Months passed, and Maya's influence continued to grow. What started as a single brave stand against a shady contract had now evolved into a full-blown cultural shift inside one of the richest corporations in the city. Employees from departments she had never even met began stopping her in hallways, thanking her for giving them the courage to question things that once felt untouchable. A quiet movement had begun within the company walls, one where junior staff started raising their hands during meetings, questioning policies, asking how projects would affect real people, not just profit margins. The company's reputation, once tied solely to money and power, now had a new word attached to it: integrity. But with change came resistance. Not everyone was happy about the new direction. Some high-level executives, long used to cutting corners in favor of bigger profits, began to push back. Whisper campaigns started behind closed doors. There were quiet suggestions that Maya was a distraction, that her focus on ethics was hurting the bottom line. One investor even threatened to pull out millions from the company's stock, arguing that the CEO had gone soft. At a private shareholders' dinner, the tension boiled over. The room was filled with millionaires and billionaires, all sipping wine worth more than Maya's entire monthly salary. As the CEO took the stage to deliver her annual address, several board members exchanged smirks, expecting her to announce a rollback on the new policies. But instead, the CEO did the unexpected. In front of hundreds of investors, she held up a framed copy of the original contract Maya had torn apart months ago, the one with Clause 8 still visible in faded ink. "This," she said, holding it high, "was the moment we stopped thinking only about money and started thinking about people." The room fell silent. Some faces showed irritation, others reluctant admiration. "Our stock is up 12% this quarter. Not in spite of these changes, but because of them," the CEO continued, her voice steady and unwavering. "This company will continue making millions, billions even, but we'll do it without stepping on the people who made this empire possible." The applause started slow, then grew louder. Even some of her biggest critics stood, offering hesitant but genuine applause. Cameras flashed. Financial news outlets picked up the story within minutes. The next morning, headlines screamed across business sections nationwide. "Millionaire CEO defends ethics over profits," and investors cheer. Social media exploded. Maya's inbox filled with messages from students, young professionals, and even strangers saying how her story gave them hope that corporate greed wasn't the only way forward. Later that night, Maya sat alone on a bench near the company's fountain plaza, reflecting on everything that had happened. The city lights danced on the water's surface, and for the first time in a long while she allowed herself to breathe. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the CEO. "Dinner tomorrow? Just you and me. Bring ideas." Maya smiled, knowing this wasn't just a career anymore. It was a mission, a responsibility. She was now part of something bigger, changing the rules from the inside. And as she looked up at the towering glass building she once feared walking into, one thought filled her heart with certainty. Money built this company, but voices like hers were rebuilding its soul. The next evening, Maya found herself sitting at an exclusive rooftop restaurant, reserved only for the city's elite. The view stretched for miles, glittering skyscrapers, luxury penthouses, and the unmistakable glow of a city built on ambition and, of course, money. The CEO arrived dressed casually for the first time Maya had ever seen. No power suit, no stilettos, just a simple designer dress that still probably cost more than Maya's rent. They sat at a corner table away from curious eyes, with waiters serving dishes Maya couldn't even pronounce. The atmosphere was calm, but Maya could feel the underlying tension, like something big was coming. As they ate, the CEO leaned forward, placing her phone face down on the table, a gesture that instantly caught Maya's attention. "I need to ask you something, and I need your honest answer," the CEO said, her voice quieter than usual. Maya nodded, bracing herself. "You think I've changed too much? That I've let emotion or worse, guilt cloud my judgment?" For a moment, Maya felt the weight of the question. This was a woman who had built a billion-dollar fortune by making cold, calculated decisions. Now she was questioning her own instincts. Maya took a slow breath before answering. "I think you've started remembering why you started all this in the first place. And honestly, I don't think that's weakness. I think it's the bravest thing I've seen since I got here." The CEO stared at her for a beat, then let out a soft, almost relieved laugh. "Good," she said, "because I have an idea that's going to make a lot of people angry, but I also think it might be the most important thing we've ever done." Maya's curiosity piqued. The CEO pulled out a slim folder from her bag and slid it across the table. Maya opened it carefully, scanning the contents. Her eyes widened. It was a company-wide initiative, an internal fund worth tens of millions, set aside to support small businesses, low-income housing, education rents, and employee mental health programs. "We're going to invest in people, Maya, not just in buildings or stock portfolios, but in actual people. I want you to oversee it." Maya's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just a promotion, it was a responsibility that could change thousands of lives. "But," the CEO added with a smirk, "there's a catch." Maya raised an eyebrow. "This fund will be entirely self-sustained. No dipping into shareholder profits. No PR gimmicks. Real tangible projects that generate both social impact and revenue streams that feed back into the fund. I want this to prove, once and for all, that doing good and making money aren't opposites." For a few seconds, Maya sat there stunned, processing the magnitude of what was being offered. It wasn't just about contracts or clauses anymore. This was legacy-level work. "Are you ready for that kind of pressure?" the CEO asked, her tone playful but serious underneath. Maya smiled, a confident, steady smile she hadn't worn in months. "Bring it on," she said. As the city lights flickered below and the night stretched on, the two women sat there. One a self-made millionaire CEO, the other a girl who once delivered coffee. Now partners in something far bigger than either of them could have imagined. A new chapter for the company, and a new beginning for Maya's life. Sometimes the real fortune isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives you choose to impact. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe to our channel, share this video, and tell us in the comments, what part of Maya's journey moved you the most? There's another story waiting for you, and it might just change the way you see the world. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon.